to the point where like I see people here get mad when things aren't sent to us, where it's like they see something at an auction and they're like, if that doesn't come to us, I'm going to be mad because it's going to fall apart.
Put your hands together for the Chronicles of Tom Spina.
It's Spina.
Clearly, you're handling this as if you're a museum archivist.
You have to. Yeah, absolutely.
Hello world, Wednesday 13 here.
Hey, this is Tom Spina.
Hello everybody, I'm Ronnie LeDrew.
Yes, my friends, my name's John Mahon.
What's going on, everybody? It's Tom.
And it's Jamie. Welcome to the Chronicles of Podcast.
Ladies and gentlemen, ladies and thems, this week we bring you a very unique guest, unlike anyone we've had on this show before. This week's guest has made it his mission in life to restore Hollywood's treasures and making sure your home looks cool as hell. Whether he's taking you back to a galaxy far, far away, or just replicating Lionel Richie's head, or simply being the Regal Robot himself. This week we bring you the Indiana Jones of foam, the Michelangelo of memorabilia, the Jedi Master of props. Put your hands together for the Chronicles of Tom Spina.
I'm gonna say that might be the greatest introduction I've ever had in my
yes!
life. I feel like I could like run into a wrestling ring like the Ultimate Warrior right now. Like, I will say one thing. It's Spina, and I'm the Cantina, and that's how people remember it.
Do you know what? I was getting to the end there, and I was like, shit, I didn't check.
Yeah. You know what you do? You'll just loop that later. Nobody will ever pick it up, and they'll think I'm just a jerk. It's like, why are you saying that? I think I got it right, Thank you very much for that. That's very kind.
Oh, I mean, first things first, Tom, how's your personal Wednesday treating you? How's it going today?
It's pretty good. It's been a very hectic day here at the studio, but that's not unusual. But it's all in the service of making good stuff, and it really though is just like this nonstop exploration of a ton of million tiny little details for every project, and it just that picture, like the guy spinning the plates. It's like that, and then juggling at the same time, and then like a unicycle, and But I'm doing okay, and I appreciate it.
So, just thought I'd check in.
Hey, does it show? Someone check in on Tom.
Actually, leave Tom alone for a little bit. I think he needs a break.
Tom seems happy. Is everything okay? I'm off in a corner somewhere with a guitar, just how are you guys today? So this is like you guys, it's evening. Me, it's the middle of the day. Like, have you settled in? Are you like you're through with your day? You're just kind of like cozy, as the hat says.
It's 9 p.m. for us, so we're just settling down, like you say.
Nice, very nice. Well, I appreciate you staying up late to chat with me. I know the schedule was a little tough to work out, but it was very nice of you to invite me on, and very happy to be here.
Absolutely. But the reason was because what you do is absolutely fascinating. It's like incredible. You see these things in movies and stuff like that, and you don't think, where do they come from? What happened to them afterwards? That sort of thing. So I find this stuff absolutely fascinating. But before we delve into all that, let's take it back. Like, where you obviously must have a love for movies and things like to do what you do. Where did that love come from? Because obviously everyone likes films, but how do you come to love to do what you do?
Oh man, I mean, look, there's not a lot in life for people my age that doesn't trace back to Star Wars, right? Like, I mean, that really is a defining moment, I think, in a lot of people's lives that are my age, especially if you're into movies or art or anything like that. That said, prior to that, for me, there was King Kong, there was The Wizard of Oz, anything fantasy, anything with stop motion, anything that things like, where Mary Poppins had the mix of live action and animation, anything like that seemed fantastical and couldn't happen in real life, to me was like, I want to make that happen. That seems fun. Like, that guy's made of tin. How did they do that? And it's this mix of having extremely practical parents, I'll call them, whose imagination was not quite the same as mine. And my own sense of wonder and that kind of maker spirit, if you will. I think that's, nowadays, it took a long time for the word maker to come out. I'm really glad it did, because it feels like it applies so well to like so many people I know. Years ago, maybe you'd be a tinkerer, maybe you'd be the guy puttering around in his garage putting an old car together or something like that. But for me, when you go back to that, I would take that sort of practical thing my parents put in me, which was, this isn't real, this doesn't exist, someone made this. And the other side of me, the maker side, goes, well, if someone made it, why can't I? And that's really like the spark of all of it. And it was just like, I knew very early on that it was all fake, it was all movie magic, and someone made it. And a lot of parents probably would have let the kid just believe, like, no, there's a galaxy, millions of miles from here where people have light swords and, whatever the heck else. But for me, it was seeing this stuff through the eyes of like, someone made this. And that just, to me, that was more of a miracle than the movie itself. Like, if it's just a story that happened, that's a documentary. That's not that exciting, but like that someone made everything in Star Wars, that someone, when Ghostbusters came out, had to make those packs and had come up with how they were going to make Slimer and how they were going to do the ghost in the car and whatever the heck else. Like that to me was just what got me going. And apparently still is.
I think I enjoy like the making of documentaries about movies as much as I enjoy the movies. Like, absolutely. It's fascinating.
Oh yeah, 100%.
So how did you go then from having an interest in that, in like props and all that stuff like the making of, to actually wanting to work in it?
Oh, I mean, it really happened at the same time. I remember seeing, there was a documentary, I think it was called Of Muppets and Men, that showed like behind the scenes of the Muppet Show when they were filming an episode. And they kind of like, there's actually a book by Christopher Finch with the same title. And it's pretty rare. I'm sure you can get it on eBay and stuff. Highly recommend it to anybody who's a fan of that stuff. But seeing behind the scenes of how they were putting that stuff together and how they were making things, and like all the energy that was happening below the camera, it's like they're all standing. So the camera's shooting 6 feet in the air and they're standing and doing their thing, and they got the puppets going and all of that. And there is all this activity below camera to make all that happen. And there's smoke pots and there's multiple people working the same character. And that, again, like just to that practical side of the brain where it was like, these are people doing this, so then when your parents tell you like, oh, you've got to be an accountant or a cop or something, I'm going, no, look, they do this, like and plus you guys have met me, that's a bad idea. I wouldn't make a great accountant, so that's really very, very early for me that it was a thing I thought I wanted to do for a living. And I just worked my way through, junior high school, college with that in mind. In high school, I was doing computer graphics and things like that. And I was using everything as an excuse to do test footage and movies and, video stuff and, blow things up in our backyards with, taking apart fireworks and things like that. Don't try that at home, kids. And through college, I went for TV and film, and just, again, everything was an excuse to make something. It was, we were doing a special with puppets in it so that I could make puppets. We were doing, something where it was an adventure so that I could make an Indiana Jones kind of costume. We would do something where there was, awesome. A guy getting hit by a car so I could do blood and makeup effects or whatever. It was always an excuse to make a monster, always an excuse to make some kind of effect.
That's awesome. You can tell. You list all those things. You're like, yeah, it makes sense what he does for a living. 100% makes sense what he does. But I was doing my research.
There's every once in a while somebody asks us like, oh, what would like 5-year-old Tom say now? Like, I'd be like, he'd be like, yeah, that makes sense. It's probably.
So I was doing my research earlier. Did I see you worked on Sesame Street, or did some work on Sesame Street?
My first job out of college was an internship at Sesame Street. I was what they called a Muppet intern. The coolest. And it's funny. So Ruth Buzzy just passed away. And she was so sweet. She was on Sesame the season I was there. It was her first season. And I remember the first day I was there. I'm a kid from Long Island. This is in, I guess it's Queens. Not quite the city, but it's getting close. I'm like, I had been to the Muppet Workshop and I'd been to the Muppet headquarters, and I got an interview by the head of the workshop, who was the guy who hired me, a guy named Ed Christie, who I luckily got back in touch with about 10 years ago when we started doing some restoration work for Henson Legacy. And he endless gratitude from me brought me on as this, kid who just would make puppets and things like that. And he saw something in my portfolio, I guess, or me. And I just remember I'm on my first day on Sesame Street, and it's, I'm in a fog a little bit at this point. This is a lot to take in. I had maybe come through once before just for like a tour of the set, maybe prior to getting the gig officially, but like it was very much, okay, you're the Muppet intern, you're going to be assisting the puppet wrangler, go stand next to Laurent, and as he needs things, he's going to tell you, and you're putting the rods in the arms, or maybe you're doing some touch-up or something like that. Mostly you're handing things back and forth to puppeteers. You're making sure that the puppets they need are ready and giving them back and forth. And so it's a little bit of a hectic thing there. They shot a lot every day. They would do, I think it was almost 2 episodes worth of street scenes in a day, which is fast. And all of these people have been there for decades. This is early 90s, and these people have been there since 1969, most of them. The cameraman, all of these people, the director. And they call lunch, and the whole place clears out. And like, I feel like I'm literally the only one standing on the set. I'm just like, and I don't know what's around. I don't know where. I'm like, and in my head, I'm like, all right, I guess I'll just walk outside and see if I can find something. I mean, there's like a deli somewhere. And I just remember it was Marty Robinson, who plays Snuffleupagus and Telly and a bunch of other characters. Monty was one that year. And Pam I'm saying her last name wrong, so I'm just going to who was always his right hand when they were doing two-person puppet. They were like the second to last ones out, and they just looked at me and they're like, "You coming?" And I was like, "Yes, thank you." I went. They took me to lunch. They showed me where the commissary was in the studio, and Ruth Buzzy was there. She came to our table as well, and they just made me feel so at home and like,
that's
it's
awesome.
gonna be okay. You got this. It was. I was really, it was a nervous first day, but it was also mind-blowingly good, and that whole internship only served to drive home that people did this for a living, and helped me kind of I think it gave me some leeway probably with my folks at home to be able to say, well, look, this is a real job. These are real people doing this creative thing for a living. So maybe there's something here. And they, to their credit, they gave me a lot of leeway. I always worked. I always had, the day job when I needed it, and kept, the money coming in and things like that. But they really gave me a lot of flexibility to explore this stuff. And my dad had an entrepreneurial spirit and did a lot of stuff like that. And I certainly pull a bit of that from him as well. And it's but a lot goes back to that first internship. It really does.
That's awesome. That is absolutely awesome. We've spoken to so many people in the past that have worked on Sesame Street, and everyone just says amazing things. Like, it just seems to be the greatest place.
It really, I mean, it was a family, and it was, this was only 2 years, I think, after Jim passed, and his spirit still like hung over the place in a good way. And it was when you had people that had worked at something for so long, there was like a sense of ownership that I think all of them had to it. Everybody cared about what they were putting on that screen. Everybody cared about every scene and every word and everything that was going on. And there was still, because of the nature of what they were doing with all these puppet stuff, there was this great impish sense of, experimentation and ad-libbing and stuff that would happen. There were plenty of happy accidents that would come about, and things like that. And there was, and they, it's like they got the work done, but they knew how to have fun doing it, which was impressive as hell.
So let's talk about what you're doing now with Tom Spina Designs, because going for your website, it's fucking incredible. Like, I was getting like amount of things. I was like, I want that, I want that, I want that, I want that. But obviously, you work in both restoration and design and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So let's talk about restoration to start with. How does this process start? So I'm guessing someone goes to you and goes, right, I've got this, it needs fixing.
Yeah, I mean that's the best way to summarize it. Yeah, right now we I got involved in this right at the start of when the idea of sort of mere mortals getting stuff that was used in movies had started to happen. Prior to, it always felt like there was, oh, that's only for like crazy wealthy people. That's like for James Bond villains. It's like, oh, what's that? Oh, that's the suit of armor that was used in King Arthur, or whatever. If you go back to the early 2000s, you go back to the late 90s, you start seeing the private dealers that were coming out that were starting to consolidate and distribute stuff that was made in the films. You got to see the rise of, the studio auctions, where you would have the studios themselves doing things like VIP auctions and whatever else. And then, the greater attention from auction houses like Bonhams and Christie's and Profiles in History and now Prop Store, which started as one of these private distributors, but now is also an auction house, and probably, the one we work with the most. What's great about that is it put tons of stuff into the hands of private collectors. And it's really been cool. I mean, it's like this great democratization of the hobby. Prior to this, it was so narrow. And now that you have so many people with it, you have that many more people that are, maybe they need a way to help display something. Maybe something's broken in shipping. Maybe something is deteriorating because of age. Maybe it's the nature of the material. You get somebody with foam latex or rubber or something like that needs special treatment. That's all stuff we deal with. So, we do this kind of range from working with the auction houses themselves, whether that, maybe that's prepping something to go to auction, maybe it's repairing something that's gotten damaged, or helping one of their clients out, or it's the clients themselves, the people who buy it at auction. They get it, and like you said, oops, this is kind of broken. Now what? Here now what?
But it's like, how do you balance preserving like the original thing versus like you've basically just replaced everything, like that Only Fools and Horses sketch where a broom's had so many handles and so many heads? Like,
yeah. What is that? The ship of Theseus, right? It's like you how many times can you replace a board on the ship until it's a brand new ship?
Yeah.
For us, it's just about being as respectful as we can of the piece itself. Every one of these, though, is case by case. You have different points of view in terms of the clients, different points of view in terms of, whether it's an auction house and they're doing an auction prep, they probably want to do less than maybe a private client who's now the forever home for this piece, who wants it to display maybe a little better. So they want to push a little further. For us, every restoration starts as a conservation. You preserve what's there. Above all, you maintain that which saw light of the camera, and reflected light onto that screen that you saw in the movie theater and your eyes went big. Once that's preserved, then it's a conversation. What do you rebuild? And, for the most part, we tend to push customers in the direction of conservation rather than restoration, which is funny because of how, we're sort of known for these really night and day dramatic before and afters. But even on those, if you really dial in, we usually try to put on our website an in-between photo. And the before photo is maybe Ninja Turtle in a bunch of pieces. The in-between, that Ninja Turtle's back together, and you can probably see white or gray patches where we've had to fill in missing material. And then the final, he's all touched up and he looks great and he looks complete. If you look at that middle one, though, all those little gray islands, those are the only things we paint. Generally speaking, we don't repaint the entire piece, which would be the easier way to do it. We go in and touch up just the cracks until they disappear. And it's called in-painting. It's a museum technique. It's for us, the way to do exactly what you were saying. How do you maintain the originalness of the thing, but still make it present nice? And that's how you only add where you absolutely have to, only add where the client is desperate to have it. And when you do, you don't cover up original material unless it's absolutely necessary for the health of the piece, long-term stability or something like that. And that's the basics of how we focus on that and how we can, do what we can to preserve this stuff.
Have you ever had something come in that's like meant a lot to you, where you've gone, oh my God, I can't believe I have this here right now?
Yeah, all the time. Literally, I can't say what, but literally right now, we have a good handful of pieces that have done that to me. It is it's a type of job where you think it would be easy to get jaded, or maybe you wouldn't. I don't know. I am kind of, and maybe I'm a little jaded from where I've been. Like, maybe there's some pieces that if they came through 20 years ago, maybe they'd get a little more out of me. But it feels like every time, you get an original piece from a movie you love, Star Wars, Ghostbusters is a great one, Terminator, Alien, oh gosh, Gremlins, like all this stuff that we get on a regular basis. We've probably had, Christine's on the other side of the wall. I could shout out and tell you the exact number of Gremlins we've had through the shop because she's been keeping count. It's in the area of like 80 at this point that we are.
Wow.
It's insane. But every time one comes in, it's still cool. You still go right up to it every time. Once they get standing up and they start getting restored, it gets you right here every time. It's just like, there it is. It's especially when it's something like that where it's a full character. It's like it's not just a prop part or a blaster or whatever. It's like it's a thing. It's like a thing that you feel like could jump to life and come right at you. And that I think helps us in the long run. The funny thing for me is when we get stuff in and it gets the whole crew to stop and look. At one point we had a gizmo from the first Gremlins here, and that one more than anything, I think, got people who normally don't even, come over to a certain area of the shop. We're like coming over one at a time. I heard Gizmo was here,
Oh, yeah.
Another
no
one
liquids. No liquids.
Yeah. But yeah, it's always impressive to me what resonates with people and what gets everybody going, not just me. So
it's amazing. Like as I said, I was going through your website and I was just looking at all the different things you've worked on. I was like, fucking is that? But one that really stood out to me was you've worked on the original Michael Myers mask, like the Captain Kirk one and the Halloween 5 Don Shanks one. I was like, fuck, this is so cool.
That one always gets people going. Yeah, those Myers people are intense fans, right? Like, you look at guys that have 100 different variations of fan-made Myers masks sometimes. And I get it, because it's like every one of them has some little detail that's captured different from the other. And it's such it's one of those things where it's like you can project onto it what you want, I think. Because I feel like it's fluid. It's almost impossible to nail, if somebody had the real first movie mask in front of me, I know the real one exists and it's in rough shape, but like if that mask had shown up in perfect condition and someone put it in front of them and said, hey, I just made this replica, 10 guys would come out and tell you, no, it's wrong, this is wrong, this is wrong, that's wrong. And then you'd be like, ha, it's not a replica, it's a real one. Because that's just the way that mask is. It is so amorphous and esoteric, and like people assign elements to it, or they overemphasize certain things over other things, and it's why you can have so many variations of it. But yeah, it gets to the point where a vintage Don Post mask is now tens of thousands of dollars, and when it comes through, we restore it the way we would a movie mask because of the value of this piece. And we've had a few of those come through, and they're really challenging to work with. Usually they've got things like mask droop where latex has started to stretch. That's really tough to combat after it's happened. Usually they've been stored maybe on a styrofoam head, so they're not supported, so they get misshapen, or maybe the latex gets hardened because it's aged and it's not in the shape they want. There's a lot that goes into preserving that stuff. The Don Shanks mask was really cool. I think that's a great example of in-painting too. If you go back and look at that, you would look at it and think like, oh, they must have repainted the whole forehead. And it's like, nope, they just painted out the cracks. And that was, I believe, Pat in the back did the primary work on that. Melissa probably did the paint on that. She's our absolute best painter for that kind of stuff. And it's amazing watching the two of them work. They're among everybody else here, but when they team up on something, it's really special.
Oh, it's just so cool. Like, but what would you say is the biggest piece you guys have had to work on? Like something to come in that's absolutely massive. Like where do I start?
Yeah, in terms of restoration or building. So from a building point of view, we did a 20-foot tall bust of the Statue of Liberty, which was like from here up with her arm in the air and a torch. If you go to the theming section of the Tom Spina Designs page, you'll see that. That was the largest thing we ever made. And that was all carved styrofoam, hand carved. It was a team of about 6 or 8 of us that worked 10 days straight, very, very long days, to hand carve this whole thing. And then it got spray coated and painted. It then got, the next year, we built a base for it. So she's got the pedestal, and now she's 26 feet tall. Whoa. And that's for Governor's Ball Music Festival. They bring her out every year. She got a sleeve of tattoos one year. She's got sunglasses now. Like every year, they've been adding a little bit here and there. But she came back for a refurb last summer, and it was really nice to see her again. But boy, she needed some TLC. They beat her up over the last 10 years, bringing her back and forth to festivals and stuff like that. But we got her looking good, and it was really, really nice to see that piece again.
That's awesome.
When it comes to the restoration side of things, where does the line stop? Like, I don't think you do vehicles doing that sort of thing. Like, you don't restore vehicles or anything. Do you know what I mean? So where is it like, oh, we're going to do masks, sculptures, we'll do this and this, but we'll probably stop there?
You know, it really is case by case. I could see doing some work on a vehicle if it was something like a fiberglass shell or whatever, or something that needed sculptural type help. Or like some kind of crazy crack repair. That is a bit big physically for us, just in terms of the amount of space that we have to work with on any given day, because we get crowded here. But at one point we were in talks to restore the Galileo shuttle from original series Trek. It was eventually restored. Great. But that was one where I had to say, like, I just physically, I don't think we have the space to do this. And it was outside of our scope. For us, primarily, it's creature stuff. If someone came to us and they had, fabric costume restoration, maybe that depends on the types of fabrics and things. There might be people that have better specialties, and we're very keen not to jump on stuff we don't know we can do. I can imagine there are experts out there at something. Like, you have these people that do what they call reweaving, that fill in the holes in woven fabrics and stuff like that, where they pull threads out of the seams and stuff like that and then hand weave in. Those are really, really specialized talents and experience. So those are people you would loop in on something like that. And now maybe we're working on a mannequin for that costume, so that we're working on the custom fit body. They work on prepping the costume elements, and then it all comes together. Or maybe there's something where we have we're doing foam latex restoration on part of a costume, and somebody else is working on a different part of it. But there's a lot that the gang in here can cover ground-wise, and I'm constantly impressed by what they're doing to make me look good. So I'll give them all credit.
Phenomenal. But obviously we spoke about the restoration, but you do like replica props and custom made pieces and things like that. Again, looking on your website, I was like, this is so damn cool. I showed my wife the basilisk tooth with the Diary of Tom Riddle, the stand you made for that. She's like, God, that's cool.
And those were original props from the film that we created that kind of display for. I'm trying to remember, was the tooth something we made to go with that book? My apologies. We go through a lot of stuff lately.
I can imagine.
There's, and it really is that mix of like, we have the skill set of an effects shop and the experience of it. We've done things like creatures for videos and TV shows and things like that. We've done props for things. So we take all of that skill set and we mix it with that sort of museum mindset on the restoration stuff. And then the display side is us just letting our imaginations go wild a little bit. And it's like, how do you find ways to give props context that maybe don't speak that loudly on their own? And there's some that, like, if you had a Darth Vader helmet, you don't need to build Darth Vader's TIE fighter around it to tell people what that is. You don't need a giant life-size statue of Darth Vader to put this helmet on just to show people that's what it is. But there are smaller elements of props and things like that that maybe need a little bit of context. Maybe you have an all gray version of something where there's one full color element in it that's screen used, and that way it has that visual completion, but you have, the element pops out and jumps out like, oh, that's the real thing right there. And this is part of the display. So, when you go through those display pages on the Tom Spina Designs website, people will see, this wide range of super clean museum work to really wild theming, and kind of everything in between.
We do have to mention the desk. Han Solo in Carbonite as a desk. I was like, shit.
That actually says a lot. So yeah, and if you go to regalrobot.com, that's where you're going to start to see what resulted from that desk, because that desk we did as Tom Spina Designs. It was a one-off for charity for a guy named Mark Hall from a Christian rock group who wanted to have this in his office and then auction it off for charity. And that really got a lot of eyes online. Like, that went viral in the days before viral was a word.
Yeah.
And it's what, we had always said, Rich Riley and I were the guys who put our brains together on that. And we were always like, we need to find a way to bring Disneyland theming into people's homes, because you go there and everything's amazing. And you're like, this is great. I want to live here, and except for the crowd. Can we get rid of them? And then it's just me.
Yeah.
Great. But that became this mindset of like, okay, how do we incorporate this stuff into people's lives? How do we put this in a way that it's useful and has some function? But still has that wow factor. You go to the Regal website. If you go to the Star Wars section, there's a furniture section. You can see some past custom projects. There's a Darth Vader meditation chamber as a desk for a woman who is a tattoo artist. You have cool. The dewback as a sofa that we did for one of our Star Wars celebration booths that is now at someone's house. And he loves, we called him Dewey, so he's like, Dewey's home. I mean, all of this kind of stuff that we do is like, how do you look at this in a new way? How do you take the asteroid chase, this amazing moment in a movie, and turn it into a coffee table that's got some dynamics and like things are happening in there, and that it feels like, at any moment the ship could just fly out of this thing. That's that sort of mindset that we put into the really high-end custom furniture stuff. And then after that, it became, how do we apply this to desktop decor? How do we do some small handheld type stuff? How do we get more into doing replica work and things like that, and getting the okay from the license people to do that? But yeah, it really traces back. That Han Carbonite desk got us into the first conversations about getting our license. Getting the license led to wild customer furniture, and then into the smaller decor, and then that all led to someone at Lucasfilm going, don't you want to make monsters? Wouldn't you be better off doing like life-size busts and replicas? And it's like, yes, we do. Let's do that. And that then led to the archive collection, which, for the better part, at that point, it was about a decade. We had been going to the Lucasfilm archives at Skywalker Ranch, sometimes as visitors, sometimes, for work, doing restoration work and helping with displays and custom mannequins and things like that for exhibits. And that relationship was key to us once we got into Regal Robot, where we had the license, and now the ability to go there and really examine stuff, really handle stuff and get in there. That's where ideas like the archive collection came about, and where we can now, we go in, we 3D laser scan in high resolution these original props and things like that, and then we make our recreations of them that people can bring into their homes. And it's just like, we say, bring home the archive. It's like, it's your chance to get that feeling we get when we go and see the real thing, but now it's just at your house. So it's even better. You don't have to get on a plane.
Oh, it's so fucking cool. It really is. But you see like these videos online, it's like, welcome to my man cave, and it's like the coolest thing you've ever seen. And you always wonder, where did they get this from? So to see what you guys are doing, you're like, that's where they get it from. Like, I think I even saw a page on your site where you'd literally done this man's entire man cave.
Yeah, that's on the TSD site, literal cave, because we turned it all into like this cave room. Yeah, I love doing stuff like that. That was, and what was interesting on that one was there was a space and budget limitations that force you to make really creative choices. And so, dealing with that and trying to make room for this guy's horror collection as we were building it led us to finding like almost a story behind all of it, and like coming up with a reason for every element we were making. And then once you had that, it was like, the story informed what else you had to make. And it was a lot of fun. That was a wild project.
All I know is I saw that and I was like, oh, if I win the lottery, Tom's coming to the UK and sorting out my house. No.
Yeah. Good luck.
I mean, has there been any moments where like you've had to like completely change and flip the script whilst you've been doing a project or restoration or whatever?
Yeah, and I'm a little not sure if I have an example I can share because there are a fair number of projects that don't get to come on the website. There are definitely times where we think we've got it and we think we know the direction on something, and then we often say stuff like, we're going to do what the piece will let us, especially when you're dealing with restoration. It's, sometimes the customer will be like, oh, well, how much can you restore it? And it's like, we'll restore it as much as it lets us. Yeah. Because there are times where, you've got something that's gotten misshapen, but it's gone rigid. And we have some techniques to temporarily soften things up, but they don't always work. And you don't want to force it because, the thing can turn to dust in your hands. So, sometimes you get to an impasse where you're like, this is as far as we're going to get it this way. So now we've got to think, are we going to crack something to make it back into shape and fill in the gap? Or are we going to leave it in this position? Are we going to change the approach entirely? And maybe this is just strictly conservation and no restoration at all. There are other times where we just don't know the way forward right away. There are times where we've brought stuff in. And I think I've told this story publicly, so I think I'm allowed to share this. Was one of the things we worked on for the Lucasfilm archives was Max Rebo from Return of the Jedi, the original costume. It was probably the most challenging thing we've ever had to work on, and it was something that came to us in a crate. We opened the crate, we looked at it, we smelled it, we took in everything we needed to do to know the condition of it. And there is the different grades of foam as they degrade give off different odor. Like we genuinely, like there are times we open up a box and just from the smell we know what we're dealing with.
That's nuts.
The looking at it, we look at it and I said, okay, close the crate. We're going to look at it again in a few days. And then we had like 20 other crates from them at the time. So we're doing all of this work. And a few days later, open it up, we look at it. Nope, not today. Put it back. And it was about a month or two work. And I just said, let's focus on the other stuff. Let's get all this other stuff moving in the meantime. And then it was like, okay, I know how we're going to do this. And once I got past that, it's like, but I didn't have it. And I wasn't going to dive into it until I had a way forward on it, because the last thing you want to do is risk a piece like that.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that's not exactly the same thing as you're talking about where you got to take a turn, but it is something where we thought it was going to go this way. And the way we had to go was completely in a different direction, but we couldn't see it yet. It's like we had to get to the point where it just made sense in your brain. And what's funny is, after you do that, you go, oh, well, of course that's what we would have done. Now the next one that comes in like that, I'm going to know it. But there's going to be something else that comes in that throws a totally different thing at me. And now I'm like, well, throw that out the window. Now I got to figure this one out. Close the crate. I'll look at it in 2 days.
I suppose that's part of the problem with some of these older materials, like you're saying, like back in Return of the Jedi. Like, I think there's an infamous picture you see online of Hoggle from the Labyrinth and the condition that thing's in now. And he's like, of course, these materials are going to deteriorate so much over time.
Well, yeah, it's foam latex in particular is really not made to last. It's wonderfully flexible, very lightweight. It's perfect for special effects, until the director says cut. And then it's tossed aside. No one cares about it. And all of that abuse that it took on set starts to sink in, and then age sinks in. And the Hoggle thing was interesting. I know that originally that was restored by someone that wasn't really a prop restoration guy. It was eventually, I think, stripped back, and they someone made a new replica head for the piece that looks more the part. And I think they may have even redone the restoration, which is great. We would have loved to have worked on that, given the opportunity. But I think it's a good example of like how you think about this stuff, because that was one where someone basically took what was left of him, and he did look like he was in rough shape, and they stripped all that away to put a new skin on him, whereas we would have preserved what was there to build up just the in-between.
Yeah.
Or if you absolutely had to strip it away, then to me the magic is you leave the underskull there with all the mechanics, all that wonderful Jim Henson Creature Shop magic that they put together, and build a replica head to go on the body, so that next to it is, this is what was really Hoggle. This is how this happened. And then here, just for visual completion, that's his costume. And look, it's got a head on it so that you feel like Hoggle's there and might talk to you and, grumble at you or something.
I can imagine, like, so if you get something with foam latex, you're like, oh, bollocks, this could be a challenge.
Not anymore, but we do so much with it at this point. It's rare that we look at something like that. There's certain silicones from the like 90s and early 2000s where they were using these overkicked, over-deadened tin silicones that like to just turn to liquid on you. That stuff where there's limits to what we can even do with just chemically. There's just, it eats itself. And so, there are times where we'll turn stuff down just based on that. We're like, unfortunately, we don't have a way forward on that. We don't have a way to slow those hands of time the way that we do maybe with foam or with polyfoam or slip latex or any of these other rubbers. So, but yeah, it's, we don't, it's rare that we look at something and go like, oh, come on. Like usually it's like, yeah, right, we can do that,
One way or another.
Yeah.
Obviously,
I was going to think about the same thing I like to, but I'm very conscious of time right now.
Yeah.
But would you see yourself as a historian, a craftsman, an artist, or a combination of the three?
Oh, I like all three of those. Thanks. I just see myself as, just a very lucky kid bouncing his way around, all the stuff he loved when he was 5, and now he's 5. I think those are 3 really good things to aspire to. I do think there is an element of historian that comes along with this stuff.
Yeah.
I don't know if historians are maybe preservationist or something like that. Like I feel like there's a strong desire by all of us here that work on the restoration stuff to preserve, to conserve, to keep around things that otherwise were going to fall apart for future generations, to the point where like I see people here get mad when things aren't sent to us, where it's like they see something at an auction and they're like, if that doesn't come to us, I'm going to be mad because it's going to fall apart. It's like they know, they can look at it and they know it's sort of, or if something, we get something where it goes through auction, then it goes through another auction, and then someone sells it to someone else. It's been shipped 3 times now. Everything gets damaged. And by the time it gets to us, it's, basically destroyed. And we're like, we saw this 5 years ago in that prop store auction. Why didn't someone send it to us then? Like we could have saved this thing then, and we'll still save it now. But man, and that just all comes out of that desire. Like keep this stuff around to preserve it. There's, there is. I say this a lot. This first time on your show though, so it'll still seem new. But there is no greater connection to a movie than being in front of, or better yet, holding in your hands something that was on screen. Yeah. There's yet to be a rush that beats that. I mean, I don't know. I haven't tried heroin yet, but I have to think this is better. Yeah. One heroin, please. No, it really is like this. There is a rush that you get being around this stuff. If you're a movie fan, there's not a lot that beats it, and I feel like that is a thing that we're all chasing around here, that high, and we feel like when you see something like that and it's going through auction and it needs help, we want to be the ones to help it because we know what we can do. I know how good this team is. know that they're so cautious and caring about keeping, these things original and doing it the right way. And you just like, yeah, we genuinely want to help this stuff. It sounds maybe self-aggrandizing or like self-serving, like I'm just trying to bring in the sales, but like no, like we have plenty of work. We're not out there hunting for jobs on this stuff. Like, we're very lucky that it finds us. But yeah, I there is a really strong feeling around here for preserving stuff. So yeah, are we artists? Sure. Are we historians? Maybe, but we're preservationists, if that's a word, or conservationists, but
great
in
word.
a pretty narrow way.
Yeah.
Completely get it. Like, I went to a film memorabilia museum thing, and they had a screen used costume of Ludo from the Labyrinth there. And I just reverted to a complete childlike state. I was just like, oh my God, it's Ludo. Oh my God. I'm almost 40 years old, but I don't give a shit. Oh my God, it's Ludo. It absolutely does that. Obviously,
how did he smell? No, I'm kidding.
I'll be honest, I didn't give him a sniff. I probably should have. To be fair, if I could have climbed up there and given it a hug, I would have. So yeah, it's fine. 100%.
We see that all the time. So with the Chewbacca's that we do, because with Regal Robot, we make life-size Chewbacca statues, and anytime someone comes into the studio and if they're working on one of them and he's back there and you've just got the 7.5 foot tall Peter Mayhew Wookiee standing there, like everyone, it's just like, it's Chewbacca. Like it's that character thing I mentioned before. It's more than just a piece of something. It's a being that you expect to just come to life in front of you, and like you said, you want to hug him.
Absolutely. Tom, we could talk to you for fucking hours. We need to bring this to an end. I know you're a very busy man.
I appreciate it. Yeah.
Before we let you go, though, plug social medias, websites. Where can people find you in the world?
Thank you. Yeah, somebody would be mad at me if I don't do that. So TomSpinaDesigns.com and at Tom Spina Designs. We're everywhere, from Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, all of that. On YouTube as well. Please go like and subscribe. There's a whole series of long form interviews with people from ILM, people like Phil Tippett and Dennis Murin and John Bergen, all of these greats that have inspired us. It's really good watching, if I dare say so myself. And then regalrobot.com for the licensed Star Wars and Indiana Jones stuff that we do, and go to @RegalRobot on YouTube. Give us a follow, please, and look for us online @RegalRobot, all the different socials, and on Facebook. We have a really active, super fun Facebook fan group. And if you search Regal Robot Fan Group or Regal Robot Showcase, it should come up. Join the group. It's separate from our main page. It's a little bit looser. There's a really great bunch of people there that are longtime collectors that buy all of our stuff, and they have a lot of fun. We share a lot of behind-the-scenes footage. We do videos. We do Q&As there. We do a lot of giveaways. It's a great time. So join us there. I think you'll have a good time.
Phenomenal. Tom, as I said, this has been so much fun. I could keep this conversation going for another hour if you let me, but we're not gonna. But hopefully we can do this again some point in the future, because barely scratch the surface.
Zoom technology that like manacles me to the screen. Like no. No, I appreciate it, guys. I thank you for wanting to chat. I've had a great time talking. I hope that someday we can maybe have some more of this chat and extend it a bit. And I just thank you for the time and for helping spread the word about the stuff the folks here do. They all work so hard at it.
Absolutely. It's a phenomenal line of work, and absolutely incredible. But
lucky
again, absolutely. Thank you so much, Tom. Really, really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Take care of yourself. See you soon.
Take care.
Bye-bye.